I recently joined Fox back in March, and as the other panelists have heard, I started on March 9th. I had 3 days in the office. I've been remote ever since, so I can really speak to how things work in a remote environment and how you can stay connected with your colleagues and so forth. But prior to joining Fox, I was at Paramount Pictures for a number of years. I've worked in the media and entertainment space pretty much my whole career. Originally started out in the music industry, then at Paramount, and now at Fox. And I'm really happy to be part of this panel today. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shannon, for being a part of this discussion. We're so grateful. We give Shannon a big round of applause in virtual land. And I often like to say that would be awesome. Our next panelist is we're going to go back to the East Coast. Is based out of New York. Rashawn, welcome. Introduce yourself. Let us know what you do. And then I'm going to ask Shannon this question. We'll come back to you, Shannon. What is the number one leadership skill set that you believe that leadership educators should be developing their students for career leadership success?
Hi, everybody. I'm Rashawn. I am based in New York. I'm currently working at LinkedIn as an executive recruiting diversity strategist, which means I do some programmatic work on the exec side to diversify our network, and then also do some strategic hiring for the senior directors and hire at LinkedIn. To answer that question, there's so many more, but I do believe one thing that we don't coach or teach, a few things, is just being self-aware, authenticity, and then also how to manage up and manage down, because a lot of times in leadership, you need to learn how to manage holistically, and we always learn how to manage up. But I mean, there's a holistic way of managing that I think sometimes we lose focus on.
Awesome. I'll give it up for Rashawn. Give him a big round of applause out there in virtual land. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Our next panelist, again, he's been a part of a lot of these programs, no stranger to these different sessions that we've done. If you can welcome Nohan. Nohan, if you can introduce yourself, let everyone know what you do. And then again, what is your number one skill set that you believe leadership educators need to be aware of if they're going to prepare their students for career leadership success?
Well, my name is Nohan Cruz. I hail from the wonderful city of Champions, Los Angeles, California. I work for Nike, and I have the opportunity to be the talent recruiter for all of our Nike direct stores, both inline as well as factory. And I'm super honored to just be here today, as always. And I think for me, and I didn't get a chance to hear everyone, but I think one of the biggest things that educators can teach many of our student leaders as they go into a professional career is really understanding the power of storytelling. Like, how do you really present the power of storytelling through pitching a certain presentation, a deck to stakeholders? Like, how do you seek to know your audience, to be able to really connect and be relational, but at the same time be able to get the buy-in through the power of storytelling? So that's kind of like my biggest thing. I know there's a few more that I have that come to mind that we'll probably have later in the conversation. But I think that if you understand how to tell your story and how to tell the story of the company that you get to work for and the ideas to potential clients, the sky is the limit when you have that opportunity to really master storytelling.
Awesome, 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 powerful. Wasp Albert, we want to welcome you to this wonderful panel. Albert, if you can introduce yourself, let us know what you do, and what is one leadership skill set that you believe is important to prepare students for career leadership success?
Yeah, hello everyone. Pleasure to be here, and thank you, Josh, for inviting us over. My name is Albert Park. I'm the Learning and Talent Solutions Manager with the Walt Disney Company, specifically supporting the television segment. And to answer your question is, what is that one top leadership trait I think is important? I think right now more than ever is leading with empathy, and being able to really connect with your audience and also your team members.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Give Albert a big round of applause in virtual land. And our last panelist, again, not a stranger at all, has been a part of so many different programs. Giselle Ruiz, please introduce yourselves. Let us know what you do. And what is your leadership quality that you'd like to share with the leadership educators today as it relates to career leadership success?
Excellent. Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for having me, Josh. Always appreciate the invitation and opportunity, but more importantly, your energy. I wish I could bottle that up for myself. Giselle Ruiz, I am the head of diversity and inclusion for William Morris Endeavor, which is a leading entertainment, media, and sports agency. I have worked across entertainment, media, tech, and educational nonprofit, always focused on the intersection of diversity and inclusion and talent acquisitions and recruitment. So excited to sort of share my journey or sort of any gems I can share with all of you today. I will echo what everyone has shared as a leadership skill and competency. I will add to that the ability to pivot, right? Having the skill set to be able to transfer, transition, pivot, make changes. We know that this year has taught us that it's important to be able to do that at any given moment in time. So I would echo that that would be one that I would focus on teaching. Thanks for having me.
So much, Giselle. Always good to have you as well. If we can give Giselle a big round of applause in virtual land, that would be awesome as well. I'm not going to waste any time. There's so many questions that I want to ask, but also for those of you that are watching, this is a roundtable session. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat box, and there is a moment throughout this entire presentation where I will bring those up. So again, feel free to present any question that you may have. But I want to move to this first question. I'm going to address it towards Shayna, Nohan, and Albert. And there was actually a study in NACE, and NACE is the National Association of College and Employers. And they said when you're developing your resume, the top 3 things that they saw with the 150 companies that they surveyed or that participate in the survey, they found that teamwork, problem solving, and work ethic were the top 3 things to put on the resume. But from your perspective, as it relates to talent acquisition and recruitment, and a variety of other things, what I want to ask all of you, well, you 3, and then also Rashawn and Giselle, please feel free to jump in as well. What I want to ask you is really simple. What do you consider these as the top 3 skills that you look for when you're in the recruitment process? So when you're interviewing a student, when you're looking to hire a student and they had leadership experience, or maybe they majored in leadership studies, are these the 3 that you're looking for, or are there some others that you're looking for that may be a little bit more important than these 3?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start off with that since I do work in the campus space. There's so many different things that you can look for on a resume from a student. And, with an internship opportunity, it could be somebody's first real job. I mean, maybe they've worked, retail, maybe they've worked food service, babysitting, dog walking, etc. But, they may not have ever had a role in a corporate environment. So, I'm looking for a lot of different things, like you said, leadership, participation with different, organizations on campus. Sometimes if somebody doesn't have a lot of past work experience, they can put coursework down that relates to kind of the opportunities they're looking to go into. If they've done certain projects, at school, those can be things that can help the recruiter learn a little bit more about that candidate and kind of about their work ethic and their background and so forth. There's going to be other candidates that have had, 4 or 5 internships already. It's across the board. So, I think, what you mentioned, those definitely are some of the top 3 things, but, just participation with activities and I think, having once we get past the resume, having an understanding of what the company that they're going to be interviewing for is really important as well. So research, but you can't necessarily see the research side of it on the resume.
Awesome. What about you, Albert? What about you, Nohan?
Yeah, just to build off of that, I would also add that, and actually kind of building off what Nohan shared, like it's the concept of being able to tell your stories in a very authentic way. Meaning specifically, how do you get people motivated, your team members, to really follow you and understand what your visions are? And that really comes down to, again, storytelling / public speaking, right? Experience is important, but sometimes if you're able to really share why, the role you're applying for or the job you're seeking with the company really connects to your mission and your vision in your life, I think there's so much more powerful. And that's powerful because then you can start to really channel that energy to your team members and really get people to, bring their best selves. And I think that's something that needs to be really focused on. Team collaboration is definitely important and something we always champion for. But again, like we do look for leaders who's able to clearly and concisely be able to communicate what is that they're going after and how they're going to get after it. That's something I just want to quickly add on there.
That's awesome. What about you, Nohan?
I think, I mean, they're all great. Everyone's saying I would totally vouch for each one of those points. I think another thing is also just what we look for is, do you understand the consumer? So I look in a resume like, if you're applying at Nike, like, do you understand the consumer, the clientele that we serve? We also look for also just people that are forward thinkers. Like, we want to see the thought process. We want to see innovators, right? Like, that's really the biggest mission statement of ours. Like, we want to be able to bring inspiration, innovation to athletes around the world. So does your resume reflect innovative? And it doesn't have to be sport related. So in the case of our company, we just want to know exactly how do you go about creating and innovating and what projects. And the other thing that we do look for is we do have a lot of people that want to go into marketing or they want to go into our social media. Like, we do look at data analytics, that if you've done an internship for a company and you help build their social media platform, telling me you got 1,000 more likes isn't enough analytics. I want to know in depth. We need to know demographics. So I think what's even cool on a resume that we look for is even like a QR code or a website, because maybe you have a portfolio that you want to be able to expand on when it comes to your resume and your storytelling and everything that you have to offer. So I would say, like, think outside the box. Give me an extension of who you are and what you have to offer for the company.
Awesome. Awesome. I love those tips. I love those ideas, forward thinking, vision, collaboration. And I want to go to another question, and I want to focus on Giselle and Rashawn. And I specified these two questions. I want to split them because I think this is always important when it deals with leadership development. Because the reality is, I think, me being a person of color, I think there's certain challenges that people of color are going to face in the workplace that other people may not face. And so, being Giselle and Rashawn, you specialize in diversity and inclusion. I want to ask this question as it relates to students of color. Are there some other things that they should be talking to their students about as it relates to leadership that they should be aware of that will prepare them to thrive and succeed after graduation? And whoever wants to go first, please take it away.
I guess I'll go first. When it comes to people of color or someone that falls in any underrepresented group, but concentrating on people of color, I do think there are certain communication skills that we have to translate well as a leader. You want to be confident, but you don't want to appear aggressive. You want to be able to have emotional intelligence. I think there are a lot of soft skills. There are a lot of personal skills that we as people of color have to utilize, especially when it comes to interviewing. On paper, it's going to be the same thing. The skills you put down the same. But the way we come across in interviews and once we get there, I think being inspirational is one thing. The way you communicate is another. The emotional intelligence is another. The way that you empower yourself and empower others is extremely important because they're going to look for, we don't use it anymore. And I'm saying we as a general population in corporate America, we don't typically use being a cultural fit, but there are still pieces of that have to fit where they look for, can you operate at this company the way that we do? And it sometimes is different and difficult from a cultural or ethnic standpoint with how you were raised and how you came about. And I had this conversation with a lot of HBCU students too. And how do you come across differently than you would in your own culture? And the whole code switching is difficult, is tasking, but it's important that you do that, but still being authentic to yourself. And it's hard it's something that you have to learn how to do and be coached on. But those are some of them, at least for me, from a diversity standpoint, in which I tell people.
Yeah.
You're muted.
You're muted, Giselle. You're muted.
I'll sort of add to that and sort of tie a through line to a lot of things that people have said. Listen, I'm in the space of disrupting status quo and really challenging organizations and companies to strive away from culture fit and really focus on culture add and differentiating their workforce as much as possible. And I think what that carries is the burden of, for those of us that are from underrepresented groups, having to be the ones that are carrying those torches, while at the same time, we want you to let us into your organization so that we can get that job and we can continue to thrive and achieve the economic empowerment that we want to get. So to his point, towing that line is critically important, but also and I've got all this music behind me all of a sudden. I'm home in Dominican Republic, and apparently there is a party going on outside. But I digress. I think towing that line is important, but I also think it's really, really more important to start at a very early age. So right now in college, helping students, helping recent grads and the future of our workforce really lean into their story, as we all have said, their narrative, what they bring to the table, and helping them understand that they are probably walking into industries and companies that are institutional and systemically designed, not for us, right? And I think it's preparing more for that. Sometimes that is the focus that doesn't happen as opposed to the particular competencies. So how do we navigate those experiences while still being ourselves? And how do we lean into our adversity? And, how do we lean into those things that we might see as a deficit, but really bring value to an organization? And we just don't spend enough time highlighting, right? So I always give an example, like I'm first generation, my parents don't speak English. I've been, paying bills and renting apartments and adulting since I was like 6 years old. And instead of seeing that as a deficit, I've always seen that as a plus, and I've always utilized that to showcase that I can multitask, right? And that I can project manage and I can take on additional responsibilities. So it's a long-winded way of asking all of you to help your students really craft their narrative and be able to share how lucky these organizations really are to have them, and to find the appropriate way to showcase their stories in a way that an organization is going to see that as valuable and not as, well, this is too different from what we're used to.
Yep. And Josh, do you mind if I add on to that real quick?
Yeah, chime in. Yes, absolutely.
So like for me, in my world where we work with really talented and creative leaders and executive leaders, and they are amazing. And one thing that we really focus on in this field of diversity and inclusion is how do we help leaders, as Rochelle mentioned, how to be humble through their approaches, right? They do have great instincts, they have great skill sets, but at the same time, how do we allow them to take a moment to step back and realize that, hey, there is another voice in the room, there is another story in the room, and how do we listen to that? And to get there, one thing we really advocate for, and we hope that future leaders will grow into, is being able to ask powerful questions. And what I mean by powerful questions is not necessarily, standing up in the room, beating your chest and asking a question. What I really mean is, how are you thoughtful about your questions? Making sure the questions itself aren't leading on to a specific answer. Here's just a generic example, right? When you're asking someone how they're doing, if you say, hey, how angry were you, right? Anger is a very strong word. So people are going to immediately be drawn to that word and then say, well, I'm angry or I'm not. But instead, asking a question like, how are you feeling? So if you take that to any other context within your day-to-day or work, we want leaders to be able to ask truly open-ended questions that will open the dialogue versus directing into the way they want to or shutting a conversation out.
That's great points. I don't know if Shana or Nohan had anything to say before I move to this next question. Anything you want to add, Shana or Nohan?
I think what I would add is teach these future leaders empathy, because I think when we think about the D&I space, we need to lead at times with empathy and compassion, but also to be able to do the research and to be able to seek to understand. And I think that if we allow this opportunity, and I think even this is something recently that I learned within this year as I've been in this space as well, is understanding the difference between like having a mentor, but also having a sponsor, and the sponsor being that voice in the room that's going to say your name because of what you have to offer that company, no matter what creed, religion, gender, or background. So I would think that would be something to really understand. And this is something that you guys can look up, right? It's really empowering them, the understanding of networking. And I think that's a big thing when you're navigating as a person of color, going in, I'm Afro Latino, I'm Puerto Rican. My dad was like, my dad had to navigate that in the 80s, and it was so hard for him to be a 6-foot black man that speaks Spanish, to try to navigate a Navy ship that it was just at the time wasn't here relevant for them. So for me, it was like, I used to ask my dad like that, how do you do that? And he goes, son, you just got to understand, you have to educate, you got to learn to be able to have many conversations. And I would hope that many educators can teach them the understanding of this visibility and belonging, but the importance of understanding the empathy. But I would also say to be intentional with the research, to be a part of a company that really resonates with you as well.
That's
Yeah.
great. That's great.
I agree with everything that's been said so far, and I think one aspect of being a great leader is letting everyone have a chance to be part of the conversation and acknowledging that everybody's coming from a different background and different experiences, and there's no right or wrong answer most of the time, but letting people be their authentic selves and be part of the overall conversation.
Man, I appreciate all your points. I think, as a leadership educator myself, I think all your points really are so valid and are so important. But more importantly, from a leadership educator practitioner standpoint, each of these can be lessons. I often tell people the first 90 days, obviously you got to be teachable, you got to be humble, you got to build relationships, you got to understand, understand who you are, be authentic who you are, but then again, understand how to navigate through different situations and circumstances, networking, relationship building, the mentor, the sponsor. I mean, I just think all of you gave such incredible code switching. That's a whole nother conversation that we get into right there. But I think there's just so many valuable tips that you all are giving, and I think it's so incredibly important. I just want to just share for those leadership educators, just to write down these notes, write down these comments, because these are things that you can build curriculum around. These are things you can build classes around. These are things you can build series around, because these points are just very important. I want to move to this next question, and I'll open it up for whoever would like to would like to respond to this question. But as everyone knows in the world, COVID-19 hit, right? I actually got a whole presentation, March 12, 2020. I was getting on a plane, getting ready to do a leadership training. I get the phone call. We have to cancel because of COVID-19. I'm sure my story is familiar with so many other people in different ways. But I want to ask you all, how has career readiness or career preparation or career success or leadership effectiveness, how has it shifted since COVID-19? Like, what are some specific things that leadership educators or that higher education professionals must be aware of now, ever since COVID-19, that you think will be relevant today? And whoever wants to chime in, please feel free to chime in.
I can go first. One, just hit up Dr. Josh to help run a workshop, because honestly, it's what we're doing right now. It's just, how do you have, as a leader, how do you have executive presence in a virtual room? And what Dr. Josh is doing is it's really embodying that. Like, how do you bring that energy into a room where we're no longer gonna, be physically next to each other? Even when we go back, being in a smaller conference room, not likely, right? So how are you able to, one, bring that energy to a virtual space? And more important than ever, we've been constantly saying this over and over again, is communication, right? Public speaking. How are you able to clearly, concisely get into a room, a virtual room, convey what you want to convey, and really be clear about what you're trying to achieve within that time frame? Because I don't know about for everyone else, personally for me, being on Zoom calls or any other calls, it's draining. It can really take a toll on you. So when you do jump into a call, you want to be making sure that you have a clear agenda, you have the proper steps in place, and also, again, bring that energy in.
Absolutely. Phenomenal.
Mine will be short, because I want to echo that the executive presence is really, really key at any level. And being able to do that virtually can be difficult. So I do think it's smart for people to start practicing with, if they have a sponsor, if they have a mentor. I'm big on having a board of directors always, because you need so many different people but using them or utilizing them to, practice your leadership skills and presence virtually, because in person you feel the energy. Mm-hmm. Via Zoom or WebEx or Blue Jeans, it can be difficult to show your personality. It could be difficult because you need to find a way to connect with the people that you're interviewing with or the people that you're working with. And if you can't, physically be there to get those commonalities to bond with, you have to figure out how to do that over a video conferencing tool. And it can be difficult for a lot of people that are not extroverts like that, or natural extroverts. So you have to figure out a way to bring that energy, but I think that comes with practice. So I think if you can do it in a tactical way where you can actually physically do it before you're actually in those spaces, to get a lot more comfortable in being you in a virtual platform, I think that's key. And that's something that we that's something we haven't concentrated on practicing and teaching, because it wasn't necessary. But I think that is extremely key right now.
Yeah, I'm going to just echo what Rashawn said. It was the practicing. Dr. Josh was going to be on a plane on March 12th. March 12th was the test work from home day that I had on day 4 of my new job, and I haven't been back since. So prior to that, I hadn't even used a Zoom call. I didn't do FaceTime. I was not a proponent of video chats, and now that's my whole life. So I think, being able to practice will make you more comfortable, will make people be able to present themselves and show their personality and so forth. But you have to be flexible to be able to pivot and become comfortable with it. This is, not something that I was, really key on before. But you know what? You got to go with the flow, and Zoom has now become my best friend.
That's awesome. Giselle, Nohan, anything you want to share?
Sure, I can jump in. As dark as this year has been, I also think it's been transformational. I'm super faith-based, and I think that a lot of this is happening for an opportunity for us to really reset and have a resurgence, and for all of us to really reflect on the fact that, the future of the workforce is going to look different moving forward. The world is going to look different moving forward, and some of those things are actually really great things that we needed to happen to get there. So again, back to what I said at the beginning, this is an opportunity for all of us to really practice our adaptability and our ways to show up at work, authentically ourselves. I think it's made us a lot more human, right? People are on Zoom calls showcasing like their homes and their children, and like a lot more of a reality of who they are day to day, and not just bringing, a representative to the table. And so to me, it's exciting for all of us to have the opportunity to be more authentic and to lean a little bit more into who we are as people, and being able to bring them into the workforce, and to showcase that, while at the same time showing that we can still, show up, do the work, have the work ethic, contribute to an organization. So I'm actually really excited about what's on the other side of this experience. And I'm actually incredibly grateful for the resilience that I've seen, how it's shown up in my organization, across my network, and both personally and professionally.
It's awesome.
I think to add to that, I think for me, and I agree with Giselle, I think for me, I want to say shout out to all the educator leaders that were actually willing to tap in. As crazy as social media is, we've had people actually create TikTok accounts. We've had people that have actually understood the power of YouTube. I think for me, the great way to be able to navigate as a leader is, they say practice makes improvement, right? So I would hope that we understand the opportunity that we have as leaders, and really to be able to teach our future leaders that it's cool. And I agree with Sean, you have to bring an energy and presence to the screen, right? So I would say, think about all the times when you had to take public speaking, right? I remember taking that in college, and I would stand in front of a mirror and I would practice. It's literally the same thing. All you're doing, though, you're putting a camera in front of you. So I would think that the biggest thing is understanding repetition and practice. And again, I agree that board of directors, those mentors in your life, but also I agree with the sales, understanding the opportunity on the other side. Like, you don't know the creative thing. So let's say you master this 101, you know how to turn the audio, you know how to get video, maybe you upgrade it to DSLR, maybe you have some other camera. It's great. Now think about when you have a chance to train your team, how do you utilize PowerPoint? How do you utilize Keynote and Zoom and its features to be able to create a really cool, authentic moment? I know for me, I bought an item where I could change camera angles. I invested in a GoPro, so I have 3 camera angles on top of my laptop. And you just practice with somebody to be able to present, different product lines and benefits and protocols. So I would say I'm super optimistic. I know we have some amazing creative minds, and it's now just laying the foundation of those pillars. And now to be able to layer some fun and really cool creative moments to be able to showcase your skills.
That's amazing. And I agree with all of you. I can say as a communicator, as a speaker, definitely made a major pivot. I've been all into technology. For those that are watching, I have a video producer working right now, Michael Flotron. He's in Portland, Oregon right now. So he does all the behind the scenes stuff. And, we literally, I called him up and we're like, okay, you got to get this, you got to get this, you got to get this. So now if you came into my my space right now, you would see so many different things that are going on right now. And it was just about learning, like you said, it was about practicing. And for me, I got my doctoral degree at a virtual college student. So one of the things I realized really quickly is being a virtual college student is different from being an in-person college student. I'm sure those who have been virtual understand exactly what I'm talking about. It's just a different dynamic. It's a different mindset, but you got to adjust. You got to get used to it, and you got to practice. Even bringing the energy through the screen is a whole nother in itself. And so I would encourage leadership educators to do things where you're allowing your students to practice speaking virtually, practice doing communication, practice doing presentations, and really to think outside the box. What are the different things that we can do to enhance our programs? I mean, we could have came on here and I could have just had a camera and we could have just did a normal hop in, but I've realized that aesthetics are critically important. Now, our panel can't see y'all, but you can see the screen where there's different aesthetics that are going on right now. And it just makes a huge difference. And so I would just encourage, as far as leadership development, how can you improve people, not from a just virtual leadership, but also just like the panel said, executive presence, how you can bring that energy through the screen, how you can do that interview through the screen, how you connect with people, how you build relationships. So I think there are such incredible points. And I want to move to this next question. This wasn't in my set of questions. And again, for those that are watching, and yes, I am using OBS, Leanne. If you have any questions, put in the chat box. I know we're going. I want to make sure I don't forget that. If you have any questions, put them in the chat box, and I'll make sure that I bring those up. But I want to go this question. Rashawn, I'm going to start with you because you're representing LinkedIn. I don't know if you can talk about career success and not talk about LinkedIn. I mean, I'm thinking about all the relationships that I've been able to build here through LinkedIn, and thank you all so much for trusting me when I reached out. But I want to ask, I'm going to start with you, Rashawn, but I want to move through everyone else as well. How can leadership educators incorporate LinkedIn into their classes or into their trainings? So how can they utilize LinkedIn into their trainings or classes? And again, if you have other platforms, please feel free to share those as well. But I'll start with you, Rashawn, and let everyone else begin to chime in on that.
Okay, I'm going to sound biased because I work here, but this comes from prior to me working here too. Younger generation, so this is the age of social media, right? Like social media is it. It's the way you do free marketing. It's the way you do free branding. LinkedIn is top tier when it comes to free branding in an enterprise space. So I do think, to everyone's point earlier about storytelling, I think the biggest, I'll say, problem with how people utilize their profiles is not telling a story. So as students and entry-level individuals start building their brand on LinkedIn, connecting with the right people that are in the industries that they want to join, that are in the roles that they want to, not the immediate roles that they want to be in, but the future roles that they want to be in 5 years or 10 years or 15 or 20 years. I think adding them and sending them notes, and then consistently branding yourself and putting information out there that shows your knowledge, that shows your worth, not just what you have on your bio, but what you're producing as content is extremely important. Because that's how you'll brand yourself, just like you brand yourself personally on Instagram for fun. And they're so good at it, this generation. I think taking all of that knowledge and information and inputting it in a way that speaks to the business side of you is important. There isn't any other platform that's being utilized like that. So I think incorporating some type of teaching to get them to understand how to build their profiles, how to consistently use the tool, just as they use Facebook and TikTok and other platforms, even when it comes to videos, even when it comes to any type of media. You can do all of that there, where we can go to, I think Noam said earlier, I can go to your LinkedIn profile and you have your actual portfolio, your video portfolio there, your physical portfolio there, your resume there, and everything is housed there for companies like ours to find you. The other thing is, with especially larger companies, and I was at Facebook, it was like this, at Salesforce, it was like this, the application volume is so high that sometimes it's hard for recruiters to go through everything. And when they do, it's really quickly, like they're looking for those key things and they're passing you off. A lot of times it's those people that we go onto LinkedIn and find who we want. So if you're branding yourself correctly, like the university recruiters, the business recruiters, the tech recruiters, we're going to find you, because when we're putting in our Boolean searches and putting those keywords, you're going to pull up. And if we go to your profile and we see that you're doing the work, you're putting yourself out there, and there are some of those soft skills that we can see in the way you interact with people. We're going to reach out to you outside of just like going through application volume. So not to say don't apply, but use your application, and then also use LinkedIn to brand yourself. And it should help you get the right opportunity or get opportunities.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Albert, Shayna, Giselle, Noan, anyone want to share? Because I got a lot of questions. I'm getting warmed up now. Anyone else want to chime in real quick?
I'm going to just chime in for, you guys all know that I just recently started at Fox, and I was a passive candidate that somebody found on LinkedIn, found me and presented the opportunity to me. I was not in the market to look for another job when I was approached. So the moral of the story for me is that, having a great profile, having a little bit maybe of your personality in it, but not the same that you would have on Instagram or TikTok and so forth, can be key in getting you to that next step. I had no idea somebody was going to be contacting me, and now here I am. So it's get those LinkedIn profiles set really well.
Awesome. I'm gonna move to this next question. I'm gonna focus on Albert and Giselle, and others can chime in. But I want to ask you all a question. There's a ton of leadership development programs out there, and I know a lot of companies that have management training programs, leadership development programs. One of my best friends is a C-suite leader. They had a whole leadership program for executives. I'm going to chime into your mind. What has been the most impactful leadership program that you've been a part of in your professional development? And why was it so impactful?
Giselle, would you like to take this first?
Sure. Let me unmute myself. There are different stages of my career. So I did Toastmasters when I was in high school. Like, shout out to Toastmasters 20 plus years later. Again, talking about public speaking and developing your story and your elevator pitch and really crafting your narrative. That's something that I did as an Upward Bound student, when I was in high school, that I still use till this day, that really set me up for success. So I would go with Toastmasters. And then I can talk about personally right now. So investing in your career to me is everything. I agree with Rashawn on like the board of directors, mentorship, sponsorship. You have to have a bit of a internal campaign, especially where you work, to be able to support you on your journey. Well, internally and externally, right? Because you also need folks outside of the organization that are helping support and amplify your voice and elevate you. But that also comes at sort of investing in your career. So LinkedIn, not for all of us to continue to go on sort of this like, I don't work for LinkedIn. They're not sending me a check, but it is a game changer. I personally use it every single day, and I find new ways to use it every single day. And I'm 20 years into my career. I think people are utilizing it at 20% capacity. There's so much that you can do there. And from a leadership development perspective, the course offerings alone of self-service that you can utilize on your own to develop your leadership skills, your soft skills, your competencies on LinkedIn is unreal. So definitely shout out to LinkedIn and the incredible resource that it really is for the professional organization. So I would leverage what they have to offer. And then I personally currently am going through an executive coaching program that, again, I've invested in my own, paying for it out of my own pocket, outside of my institution, because I do think it is important to make sure that you're a constant learner, that you're always developing yourself, that you're insatiably curious, and no matter where you are in your career, there's always something to learn. That particular program is called Beyond Barriers, and it's focused primarily for women, female leaders, and women of color. So happy to share additional information about that. But those are the pivotal ones in my career that I can think of have been incredibly helpful in my continuous journey of leadership development.
Awesome.
Yeah.
A shout out to you, Giselle. There is Maria Lopez, Trio alum, 3 times, Talent Search, SSS, McNair, first generation. So shout out to all the first generation students, professionals out there. Hello. Albert, it's on you.
Because what it really does is it brings a lot of self-awareness to the individual, to the leader, right? How they're feeling that day, how they are reacting or responding to situations. It's really powerful. So that's one program that I want to just talk about. That's we leverage into helping future leaders, but also to really help put some of our theories to practice, one thing we really champion for, we're going to continue championing for, our mentor programs. So we try to find ways to connect our key leaders with those who are in our business, who are in the entry level or mid-level professionals, so they can really be able to not only connect with their day-to-day teams, but also connect with someone across the business, so they can truly learn from one another. And I encourage, and hopefully, that's being done within the institutions you're all at today, because you don't always have to be someone with the high title to be a mentor. You can always be a mentor to those around you, and those you haven't met yet, right? We're always learning from one another, and just want to encourage everyone, you don't have to have a fancy, flashy title to be a mentor there. So that's my quick thing.
Amazing, amazing. Real quick, there was a question that came in. So Rashawn, and I see another one. I saw Denny Roberts just have one, so I'm gonna start with this one question. Gareth, I'm gonna go to you, Rashawn, real quick. You're at LinkedIn. It's a LinkedIn question. What would you say to those who say LinkedIn is for business and should not reflect anything personal? So the whole notion is, do you put your personal business on LinkedIn, or does it just strictly stay business? Thank you so much.
Well, it depends on what personal business is. I mean, what personal information is. Like, there's certain personal information I wouldn't put on Facebook. But LinkedIn is a social media platform. Let's be 100% clear. I think in the age and business that we are in now, where we want people to bring their authentic self, I think it would be hypocritical for us to only talk about business only on a platform. Especially this year alone, I don't think if people had not utilized LinkedIn to talk about the personal issues that we have that affect us in our business life, we would have failed as a platform. So I don't think it's only to talk about business, because most of our life is at work. Like, we spend more time at work than we do with our family and our friends. So we incorporate that work-life balance together. Or work life is combined. I don't want to, when I interview people, I want to know who you are. So when I look at LinkedIn, I'm a little nervous when I only see you talking about the business and there's no personal experiences in that. Like, who are you as a person? Because companies in tech, at least, we don't want robots. Media, we don't want robots. We don't want you to just come and do work. Like, we need you to bring your creativity. We need you to bring innovation. And the only way you can do that is by being your authentic self, or close to your authentic self. So when you're talking about a platform and branding yourself, you can't brand yourself without talking about personal experiences. Of course, be smart. There's a limit to your personal experiences that you put on there. Same way there's a limit for me of what I put on Facebook and what I put on Instagram. But when it comes to me personally, and you guys can look me up on LinkedIn, I bring my entire self to LinkedIn, because I need leaders to see who I am. When they hire me for my next role internally, because I won't be leaving LinkedIn anytime soon, but when they look for me for an internal role and maybe a hiring manager that I have not interacted with comes and goes to see my branding, I want them to see who I am, because they have to work with me as a person, not just as a business.
Denny Roberts had a question. And one of the things he talked about as far as leadership educators is this concept of self-awareness as an idea of leading to your purpose. And what he wanted to know was, how important is this as it relates to career readiness? Is it important that students learn more about themselves, learn about who they are? I know some people said earlier, learning your assets, understanding how to tell your story, understanding your cultural background is actually an asset that you bring to the company every day. But I want to ask Shana and Nohan, is this valuable in helping students prepare themselves for career readiness?
Nohan, you can go first this time.
Thank you. I would say 100% self-awareness is really big. I know that for us, in order to be able to grow the business, you need to grow your team. But the only way you can grow your team, you need to grow yourself. And that's a really big part of what we do. It's something that I'm really proud of our company, is understanding that. And Rashawn said it earlier. And I mean, I think we've all said this. Like, for me personally, I've learned my pillars is to be genuine, authentic, and relational. And I think for me, in order to be able to take those steps, I need to be very aware of who I am, where are my areas of opportunities, where are my strengths, and how can I lean into those? I use a metaphor, right? When you think about a boxing match or an MMA match, it's the team in the corner that you have, the cut man, trainer, the coach, But at the end of the day, it's you yourself that needs to get up and go into the middle of the ring and continue the fight that you're going after. And it could be 1 round in your career, or it could be 12 rounds. The important thing here, though, the only way that you can get to that echelon of leadership is to be very self-aware of what you can bring to a team, and also understand the areas that you need improvement. So that's where you build your team around you and find those that can give you those strengths that you need. So I think for me, that's the biggest thing, is understanding that self-awareness. And kind of earlier to what they were saying about development, I think for us that we have what's called the Discovery Workbook. And I would highly even say one of the biggest things that allowed me to get to the position that I am today is really leaning in and continually being aware of who I am, where I came from, and know where I'm going, and build those mile markers out. So 100% I would agree with that.
That's awesome. Shayna.
Yeah, I would just say, one thing with self-awareness as well is being aware of what values you hold and what the core values of the company that you're interviewing for or pursuing are, to make sure that they align with, what's important to you. And that, kind of leads back to self-awareness, because if you end up, taking a position with a company that doesn't have the same values that you have, you're not going to be happy, and it's going to be a miserable experience. So I think, getting to the point where you kind of know what's important to you is important as well with self-awareness.
No, those are phenomenal responses, and I mean, honestly, as a leadership practitioner, we can really dig deep into self awareness. That I believe you can do a whole a whole year of curriculum based on self awareness. There's just so many different areas of learning yourself and understanding who you are. I mean, there's so many different things. Literally, in one of my leadership books, I have a whole 11 concepts when it deals with self-awareness. So that's a really great question. Thank you so much. I want to focus this now on Albert, Rashawn, and Giselle all the way across the on my screen across the table. And again, Nohan and Shannon, feel free to chime in. Inclusive leadership. I think this is a big deal. I mean, I think we hear a lot about creating an inclusive culture. We hear a lot about being an inclusive leader. Now we're even dealing with the concept of equity. We're dealing with the sense of belonging. So I guess the development, there's so many different areas. And I know one of the things that a lot of leadership educators talk about is, how do you integrate social justice? How do you integrate student activism? How do you integrate diversity and inclusion into the conversation? And so I want to ask all of you, as it relates to inclusive leadership, what are some key things that you believe that leadership educators should make sure that their students are dealing with or tackling as it relates to that concept? And please feel free to add on that. If you want to bring in equity, if you want to bring in a sense of belonging, whatever the case may be, please feel free to do that. And so whoever wants to go first, it's on you.
The one that I think we'll all say or should be top of mind is just awareness of bias. Not just from the perspective of who you're being interviewed by, but we all have bias. And no matter what race, what cultural background, we all have bias. So I do think being aware of what those are, I'll give you a real time bias for me. Not because of my role, but I have a bias where if there are 3 people and I see someone my background is Black and African American and Cuban. I see someone who's Cuban who happens to be Afro-Cubano, I'm going to talk to them. That's my bias. I will gravitate towards them first, but I have to check that sometimes, because as a recruiter, I need to have free range to talk to everyone, right? So everyone has that. I do think cultural intelligence is something that we don't often talk about, that affects us in the workplace, because there are certain things that we might not know, or we're not attentive to the culture of others, and it could affect the way that you lead. Those are my 2. I'll let everyone else talk because we probably have the same ones.
Awesome.
Yeah. For me, it's intentionality, right? We're on a learning journey, and all of those pillars that you mentioned, Josh, we're becoming very sophisticated in organizations and companies. And really, this used to be like the extracurricular thing that people talked about on the side. And now it's becoming a critical business imperative of all things that need to be embedded for the embetterment of the business and the organization, right? So if you are a future leader, you need to be leaning into diversity and inclusion, sense of belonging, equity, tying in racial and social justice. As Rashawn said on his LinkedIn, he brings his full authentic self, right? Like all of these things are intersectional and conflated because they're all one and the same, which is that everyone wants to be able to show up to an organization where they can be themselves, where that is going to be valued and embraced, and where it's going to be celebrated and they can strive and be successful, right? And the work that we all need to do as leaders to get that really is around what we've talked about in terms of empathy, in terms of emotional intelligence, being able to have some difficult and challenging and sometimes uncomfortable conversations, right, around microaggressions and code switching and all of this language that's also fairly new. Every day, as someone who's a practitioner in this space, I hear a new term that I'm like, okay, so, now we're saying BIPOC. All right, so let me figure out what that means. And, it's evolving and it's fluid because we're talking about the ecosystem of who we are as humans. And what I tell my leaders every single day is, this generation, right? Like right here, right now, this is an expectation, right? They like cancel culture, or they're not going to come work in your organization. They're not going to want to be a part of anything that you're leading or involved in if they don't feel that these are issues that you're prioritizing. It is incredibly important to them, which obviously makes me really excited in the work that I do. But the one word I would use then to sort of wrap this monologue up is just intentionality. It's just the intentionality around really knowing that this should be top of mind and not sort of an ancillary thing. So make sure that you're embedding it in all of the development that you're doing within your institutions.
Yep. I mean, I'm trying to think what else can I add to what was just shared. That was so much and so rich. I think if anything, one additional small thing I would like to add to that is how do we instill curiosity into our leaders so that they are being more open to different stories, different conversations, because with curiosity, then you're no longer in the position of believing that you know everything. You start to, again, the word humble comes to mind right now. You come in and start a conversation to really learn about the individual and their cultural backgrounds, right, and their personal stories. And something that we always, like to share in a lot of our diversity and inclusion workshops at Disney is we talk about, I'm sure you've heard this quote before: diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to the dance, and belonging is dancing like no one's watching. And that's really important, especially in our company at the Walt Disney Company, because that's what it really is about. We want people to really, truly come and be themselves, their authentic selves, and share their creativity like no one's watching, right? So one thing I think just for me, just as a quick takeaway, is like, how do we instill curiosity? And I think that really comes to what you're all doing here today, right? You are educating our future students and leaders on all of the, systemic racism that is happening and why that is a challenge and how we can overcome all of that together as a one unit. So that's it.
Awesome. That's awesome. Oh, say so, Rashawn.
One more thing. Yeah, lead with empathy. I think that can help out a lot when you lead with empathy, because it opens up so much when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and belonging, and equality. And you can't have one without the other, because you want it to be an equal workplace. You want to be an equitable workplace. You also want to be an inclusive workplace. You also want diversity. And the other piece is, once you get in, you have to continue that growth. Like, it's not like a bam, I'm there. And in most companies, if you can speak to the business to understand how inclusivity and equity and equality leads to innovation, and it directly hits the revenue for the company to grow, I think then the leaders that might not be there that you're sitting with will understand it. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I want to add to this too, real quick. I think community is a big part of the D&I space. Understanding like, how can we have our students understand to create a very like robust ecosystem of like belonging and having access to various communities. I know for us at our company at Nike, we have the United Network, where it's the Latino and Friends Network, the Black Employee Network, our Asian American, our military veterans. It's all of these things of like really understanding, like, how do we invest and engage in external communities that have the representation to then be able to like give that voice, internally to the underserved at our company. So I think community is a big one. One of my mentors told me that we suffer in isolation, but we heal in community. And I think that something like that is what we need more from our student leaders, because they want to heal in community. They they want to understand, lead with empathy, right? So I hope that we can be able, as leaders and educators, tell our students, hey, we need to be able to create this system of community to those around us within our neighborhoods.
It's good. That's so good. I want to say two things. I got a couple things I want to do, but really quick, I want to say, and I think it's important. I think as leadership educators, we all know that you never stop learning. I think leadership education is an ongoing process. I often like to say, my father always once said, he said, the Bible's been here for several years, but no one will ever understand it. And I think that's so true, because there's so much new things you learn over and over. I think same is true with leadership. I think it's going to continue to grow and evolve. And the same is true with diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging as well. I just like to use them all, because that's like the process that I've been accustomed to as far as growing. It never stops. It's a lifelong process. And so I just encourage all leadership educators. Leadership is not just leadership. I believe inclusion, diversity is a part. It's not separate. They are organically together, and we got to make sure that we're organically creating those. And one of the things I heard yesterday, I was doing on a webinar with Gen Z, and one of the guys was talking about as it dealt with social causes, and in his particular study, about 2,000 plus members of millennials and Gen Z, he found that racial equality was number 2 as far as the top issue right now with Gen Z. That was really intriguing to me, and how it's changed. So this is a real conversation. This is what our students are going through. And Shannon, there is a question. I'm going to ask this question. It's from Kristen. I got one other question I want to make sure I get to all of you as well because time is of the essence. We got about 11 minutes left. And while I'm sitting here about to answer this question, I also want to say, if I believe they're recording, it looks like they're recording, but we also record this on the back end as well. So if you're interested in the recording, again, if NASFOR has it, then I won't send it out. But if they did not record the roundtable session, Michael, the video producer, is going to put a link in the chat box right now. If you click on the link, you fill out the form, we'll have all the information to you. In addition to that, if you want to connect with any of these speakers, first of all, go follow them on LinkedIn. They're all on LinkedIn. They're all amazing people. But number 2, if you want to bring them to speak virtually or bring them to your campus, whatever the case may be, that information will be in the chat box. So hopefully Mike's going to put that there soon. There it goes. You just put it in there, as well as circle the change. It's a real quick form. I created specifically for this, so it makes it real simple and easy. Some of y'all probably already get all my emails anyway, like 40,000. But this will be specific to this discussion as far as the recording. I'll even put the contact information if you want to connect with these individuals on LinkedIn, speakers, and all that sort of stuff as well. So it's there as well. But I want to get to Christy's question, so I'm going to come to you, Shannon, real quick. I guess we can get like 2 responses to this, because I have 10 minutes, and I do have one question I want to end with. The question is this: any suggestions on how to motivate, convey to students the importance of developing these soft skills and participating in leadership programs to prepare them for the job market? My students are very career focused, and sometimes the term leadership program doesn't grab their attention. How can we get students excited about career when they hear leadership, they're not excited? So I'll start with you, Shane, and then if anyone else wants to chime in, please let us know. How do we get these students engaged?
I think if I had like the end-all answer, then I'd probably be doing something else. But I think, motivating students to know that, it's a very competitive environment, especially right now, and anything that they can do to help themselves stand out and have additional, things to offer is really key. And within the student population that I've worked with over the last few years, there's going to be all varying degrees of motivation there. There's, I tell interns when they start, you can make the most of this opportunity. You can network, you can get involved, you can meet other people within the organization, or you can just, clock in, clock out, get something to put on your resume, and that's all you're going to get out of it. So, letting them know that they're going to even just get more out of things by, participating in these kind of activities I think, is one way to get them motivated. And I don't know if some of the other panelists have any great words of wisdom, but I think, I think people know that it's very competitive. So anything that they can do to help themselves stand out, is going to be key.
Anybody else? Awesome point, Shana. Anybody else?
I can chime in here real quick. I think one is if they are as competitive in their career, point to any CEOs that are in place right now. If you hear any of their podcasts, hear any of their interviews, you will hear it in their language and in how much to emphasize the importance of the soft skill sets. Again, like talking about emotional intelligence, public speaking. They all mention that regardless. So my encouragement is then, or advice is, just continue to point towards others. Like for example, our CEO and the creative chairman of Bob Iger, for example, right? Look to him as an example. And there are many more I can go through, Bob Chapek and many, many more. But all leaders thus far that I've interacted with, who are in high executive positions will always say soft skills is, the number one focus now more than ever before.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I was just going to chime in. I got one more question for the panel. I was just going to chime in. As many of you know, you see Circle of Change everywhere. We've been doing a career leadership conference now for 11 years. And, the number has been increasing year by year. We had to go virtual this past year, just finished about a week and a half ago. But I can tell you, first of all, it's professionals like you being advocates and sometimes just signing your students up. Again, I think certain programs you got to vet, make sure it's a good investment. But I mean, just getting your students there. I think just whatever you can do. I know one guy was talking to you yesterday, making an extra credit for the classroom, but just get them there. But knowing once they get there, the program is going to change their life. Because I think a lot of times, if you get people there, and I'm not trying to be rude, but if the program is whack, they're not coming back. So if you vet the program right and you make sure you know that once they hit this place, their life is going to be impacted, you'll find that their life will be impacted. They'll tell other people. I've seen this with Circle of Change. I've had so many students come. I didn't know what this was. I didn't know what was going on, but my life has been changed. And it's because as curators, as programmers, as educators, sometimes you got to do whatever you got to do. I'm sure Nohan understands that with recruit. You got to do whatever you do to get them in the door. But once you get them in the door, you have to deliver. So I would start by saying, number one, make sure your product is tight. Number two, understand your student, what's going to capture their attention. And then when they get there, if you blow their mind, you've done their job. And I also want to say this. So many times we get caught up in numbers. But again, numbers ain't everything. If you only have 5 people, if you only have 12 people, those could be 12 future CEOs. Again, of major companies that can run the world. So many times we get caught up in numbers versus quality. It's all about quality. Are you truly impacting their lives? So I just want to share that. As I go to my last question, I'll start with how to move back up to Shana. Last question I wanted to ask. I love this question. I had another one, but I'm going to go to this one. I don't know. See, I got messed up. I want to go to that question. I want to go to mentor, mentee, but I think this is more powerful. This is leadership. Who's been the most impactful leader in your life and why? So honey, I'll move through my screen.
Man, that is Jesus. That's like a hard one. I think the greatest leader in my life has been my abuelita. She was a woman that came from Puerto Rico, and she came with very literally nothing, and started out in Philadelphia. This is not a Fresh Prince Bel-Air version. I'm just saying she went to Philadelphia, and she decided to come west, and that's where my father, really understood the power of just education. So for me, my abuelita, when I was growing up, she taught me the value of, aside from like smelling good, looking good, right? When you're presentable, she always kept saying, think about the other things. Think about things that other people won't do. Think about going the extra mile. And I think for me, she led like that. And the reason why I talked about community earlier was because my abuelita, my grandmother, she was in the community. She would take her one walk to the center and be able to engage with the community, invest in the youth. And for her, it was like each one teach one, right? We probably heard the saying, and that was my abuelita. So for me, that's been my greatest leader. And I think that she was, to me, the original Mamba mentality of Kobe. Like she told me, you're gonna have haters in your life, but you gotta remember, and I think Kobe says something similar, like people hate the great ones. So my grandmother used to tell me, be a great one. That's what my greatest inspiration of leadership is.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. No, I love it. I love it. Giselle.
Yeah, so I mean, my answer outside of family for sure is always the same for this one. So Daisy Alger Dominguez, who I call my personal Oprah, she is currently the CHRO for Vice Media. But she is someone I worked with at Disney, and then she brought me to Google with her during the time that we were there. And she's just a boss. She's the first female executive that I saw myself in. Representation matters. This is why I do what I do. So as a young Latina, first generation, everyone in my family is blue collar, right? Like I never saw anybody that looked like me in an executive or leadership position until Daisy. And she is, she is the definition of courage and leadership and heart and bravery. And also just like the hardest working woman in the game. And so for me as a Dominican American to be able to see that, and know that I could aspire to also reach those heights. She's also nonstop, right? Constantly evolving, always finding a way to up her game, change the game, and more importantly, impact as many people's lives as possible. So she's who I emulate every single day and who I want to be when I grow up. So it's always a shout out to Daisy Alger Dominguez. If y'all don't know her, you definitely should connect. She's the best.
I love it. I love the fact of representation matters. That's so powerful. Rashad.
My answer is usually Mikey Hersom, who was the founder of Ignition that was bought by Havas Media, primarily because he hired me right out of graduating grad school from an HBCU with zero experience in recruiting in corporate America. And he told me after my fifth interview, was with him, and it wasn't an interview. He sat there and he was like, I just want to get to know you. So we just had a casual conversation. And I asked him, I was like, why do you just care about me? And he was like, I can come in and teach anyone how to do the business, but I can't teach personality. I can't teach someone that I can get along with. I can't teach someone. So that's always my answer, but I'm going to change it. Courtney Aaron was a leader at Facebook, and she hired me from Salesforce. And she cultivated me in a short time. Like she invested in me. I'd never done executive recruiting on that level. And she took a chance because she saw value in the work that I've done in diversity recruitment. And she also took the time to get an idea of what I wanted out of my career. And no other leader that I sat under or potentially sat under asked me, what do you want? And then she built a role based on what I wanted. And it showed that she valued my skill set versus me trying to fit into a role. She was like, let me tailor my roles towards people to make a holistic team. And when I think about leadership, it shows that she's not blanketing people at everyone should have these skills. No, your skills set is this, right? So let me put you in a role that fits that. And then I'll find someone else that can counter your weaknesses. And then together you guys can make a great team. And it showed what a leader looks like with a team and how you fit the pieces and how you cultivate people based on their strengths and not trying to sharpen their weaknesses or discounting them because of their weaknesses.
Amazing. Wow, that's powerful. I love it. I love it. Albert.
There we go. Man, I had to think through this one a little bit, but I think for me, the immediate person that came to mind at the moment was a leader within our department. Her name is Jen Rieberger. She's a VP business partner. And for her, like, it's been really impactful because in her role, she oversees diversity and inclusion. And she actually invited me to join that team, a few years ago to be able to be part of something that will really impact the way our business operates, and also how our contents will be displayed. So really putting me in the seat where I can truly learn from other leaders, but also hear different stories, like things that we've been talking about today. And to a point where sometimes you don't even know what's going to happen at the tail end of that, but just kind of trusting that and, been a mentor to me the entire time. But most importantly, what I want to get at is I feel that this leader Jen was, a very key leader to me because she was able to give me very clear feedback, telling me exactly what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong, in a way that I can understand. That's sometimes really hard to do. Anyone in a leadership position will know that. Giving feedback's not easy, but she's able to do that, and I'm able to continually learn from her every day. So that's just been a blessing.
That's amazing. Awesome. Powerful
Yeah.
story. Man, I love it. Shayna.
All right, I'm going to keep it brief because I know we're getting close to time, but I had two former bosses that I worked with at Paramount, and also one of them I worked with in the music industry and at Paramount. That was Nancy Pope, who is the person who kind of led me into pursuing HR when I had never thought of that as a career path. And then within that, I really ended up having an affinity for talent acquisition. And my boss, Lisa Book, who oversees talent acquisition for Viacom on the West Coast, but now Viacom CBS, she really helped me develop my recruiting skills and develop my passion for working with college students and early career candidates. And just to echo with Giselle, I did have the opportunity to have Daisy in my life for a couple of years when she was at Viacom, and boy, what a whirlwind and amazing person. So I can vouch for everything that Giselle said about how amazing Daisy is.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Wow. I love always concluding with stories like that because I just think they're so powerful. And I just want to, first of all, just thank our panel so much for taking time out of their busy schedules. What you all don't know, literally reached out to them about a week and a half beforehand just because we were playing a Circle of Chat. I didn't have no time. And so they all responded within 48 hours. And so I'm so honored that they took time to respond. As anyone knows me, I don't just invite people to invite them. I invite people that I believe in, that I know have a message, and I know are very doing incredible work. So we're so grateful for all of them. I believe Giselle's in the DR. So she's having a good time out there. We in South Florida, so we got a little weather, but so she's having fun. And I just want to thank all of our panelists so much. If you can just give them a big shout out in virtual land, just let them know that we appreciate them. Again, encourage you to reach out to them. They're on LinkedIn. Reach out on LinkedIn. Looking for people to speak on your campus, reach out to them about that. But just thank you all so much for being a part of the program. I'm so always excited to be a part of the Leadership Educators Institute. Love this program that NASPA does every other year. And again, Tiki and the entire crew, thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of this incredible program of empowering the leadership educators to empower the next generation of leaders. Know that your work is powerful. Know that your work is important. Know that your work is changing our community, our nation, and our world. Again, thank you all so much. I'm over time. I got to shut it down. But thank you all so much. Hopefully we can connect at another time. Please feel free to connect with me as well. And it was great. Thank you. Peace.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.